The 1970s gave us war films that directors today are still stealing from. While everyone remembers Apocalypse Now, did you know Sam Peckinpah made a war film so violent that German audiences gave it standing ovations while Americans walked out? Or that one forgotten Vietnam movie predicted the entire conflict's outcome years before it happened? Number 14. Raid on Entebbe, 1977. This NBC TV movie about the Israeli hostage rescue mission beat two competing films to the screen by mere weeks, and somehow ended up the best of them all. Shot in just 28 days while the actual events were still fresh, it recreates Operation Thunderbolt, where Israeli commandos rescued 102 hijacked Air France passengers from Uganda's Entebbe airport in 1976. What makes this film stand out is its documentary-like urgency. Director Irvin Kershner had access to classified Israeli military information, resulting in tactical details that other versions missed entirely. The production even used several Israeli soldiers who participated in the actual raid as technical advisors. The cast was Hollywood royalty: Charles Bronson, Peter Finch in his final role before death, Yaphet Kotto playing Ugandan dictator Idi Amin, and James Woods as the mission commander. The film's most incredible sequence involves the actual C-130 Hercules aircraft used in the real operation, on loan from the Israeli military. Despite being a television production, the film was so powerful it received theatrical releases in Europe. Critics praised its unflinching portrayal of terrorism, with Roger Ebert writing it avoids easy patriotism to show the human cost on both sides. The real Yitzhak Rabin reportedly said it was 85% accurate, though he objected to scenes showing Israeli cabinet debate. The film's lasting legacy, it essentially created the modern military rescue thriller genre that continues with films like Zero Dark 30 and Argo. Number 13. Conduct Unbecoming, 1975. This forgotten psychological thriller, set in a 19th century British cavalry regiment in colonial India, plays like Peaky Blinders in uniform. When the regiment commander's widow is assaulted at a party, two officers investigate, one a privileged traditionalist, the other a progressive outsider. What starts as a simple case spirals into a labyrinth of military corruption, class warfare, and imperial brutality. Director Michael Anderson assembled a cast of British acting royalty, including Michael York, Richard Attenborough, Trevor Howard, and Stacey Keach. The film was shot entirely on location in actual British colonial buildings in India, giving it haunting authenticity that studio productions couldn't match. The production faced constant challenges, from monsoon season flooding sets to local political protests. Most controversially, Anderson insisted on using actual British regimental artifacts and uniforms, causing diplomatic tension when the British government objected to their portrayal. What makes this film remarkable is how it dismantles British military mythology. The regiment's traditions are revealed as elaborate covers for horrific crimes against the Indian population. Critics called it a devastating critique of colonial military culture, though it flopped at the box office, earning just $1.8 million. The film's most shocking sequence involves the revelation of how officers systematically assaulted Indian women while using military honor to silence victims. When released in India, audiences reportedly applauded this scene, while in Britain, veteran organizations condemned the film as anti-military propaganda. Number 12. The Blockhouse, 1973. Peter Sellers in a dramatic role that's almost impossible to watch today. A true buried treasure. This claustrophobic survival film follows 6 men trapped in a German bunker after a D-Day bombing. They have plenty of food, wine, and candles, but absolutely no way out. Based on a true story, the men survived for years in total darkness until their supplies finally ran out. What makes this film extraordinary is its minimalism. Director Clive Reese shot it almost entirely in a real abandoned bunker with no artificial light, just candlelight. The production was so authentic that several crew members developed claustrophobia during the 6-week shoot. Sellers, desperate to be taken seriously as an actor, delivers a devastating performance as a French prisoner slowly losing his mind. Charles Aznavour, one of France's greatest singers, plays against him in what critics called the most emotionally brutal duet in cinema. The film's most difficult sequence involves the men realizing they've lost track of time completely, having no idea if they've been trapped for months or years. When one character dies, they're forced to live with his decomposing body, unable to dig through concrete to bury him. Critics were divided, with European reviewers calling it existential masterpiece, while American publications dismissed it as miserably slow torture. The film grossed just $840,000 and vanished from circulation until a 2019 restoration. Quentin Tarantino calls it the most authentically claustrophobic film ever made, and keeps a 35mm print in his personal collection. Number 11. Aces High, 1976. When this WWI aviation film premiered, actual Royal Flying Corps veterans in their 80s walked out crying. Set in 1917 France, the film follows new pilot Lieutenant Croft joining a squadron where a pilot's life expectancy is just 3 weeks. His commander, Major Gresham, is a hard-drinking ace hiding severe psychological breakdown beneath his heroic reputation. What makes Aces High extraordinary is its aerial sequences. Director Jack Gold assembled the largest collection of functioning WWI aircraft since the actual war. No miniatures or special effects. Every dogfight features real planes performing actual combat maneuvers. 3 stunt pilots were hospitalized during production. Malcolm McDowell delivers a harrowing performance as Major Gresham, based directly on interviews with actual WWI aces. The cast includes Christopher Plummer and Simon Ward, with all actors required to fly in real biplanes to understand the terror their characters experienced. The film's most devastating sequence involves a rookie pilot freezing at the controls during combat, causing multiple deaths. This scene was based on documented incidents that military censors suppressed during the actual war. Critics praised its technical achievements, but British audiences largely avoided it, uncomfortable with its portrayal of Royal Air Force heroes as traumatized alcoholics. It grossed just $2.1 million against its $4.5 million budget. Director Martin Scorsese calls it the most honest flying film ever made, and screened it for his crew before making The Aviator. The film's anti-war message was so powerful that the RAF refused to cooperate with another major production until Top Gun in the mid-80s. Number 10. Overlord, 1975. This experimental British film about D-Day seamlessly blends scripted scenes with actual combat footage so perfectly you can't tell where reality ends and fiction begins. Following a young soldier from basic training to the beaches of Normandy, the film captures his growing certainty that he won't survive. What makes Overlord revolutionary is director Stuart Cooper's unprecedented access to the Imperial War Museum archives. After viewing over 3,000 hours of actual WWI footage, he selected the most haunting sequences and built his narrative around them. Cooper then used 1930s lenses to shoot new scenes, matching the vintage footage's visual texture exactly. Actor Brian Sterner prepared by living on army rations for 3 months, dropping 24 pounds to match the gaunt appearance of actual 1940s soldiers. The production used genuine W-2 equipment, including functioning tanks and aircraft, loaned from military museums. The film's most extraordinary sequence intercuts the D-Day landing with the main character's surreal dream of floating through history, creating what critic Roger Ebert called the most poetic war sequence ever filmed. Released during Britain's 1970s economic crisis, the film vanished after brief theatrical showings, grossing only $18,000. Critics were baffled by its dreamlike approach, with The Guardian calling it neither documentary nor drama, but something hauntingly between. The film disappeared until Martin Scorsese discovered a print in 1992 and championed its restoration. Director Christopher Nolan cited it as direct inspiration for Dunkirk, saying, "Overlord showed me how to make history feel immediate rather than archival." Number 9. Breakthrough, 1970. This controversial German-American co-production dared to tell a WW2 story from the Wehrmacht perspective, following German soldiers retreating from Russia while fighting both the Americans and their own fanatical SS officers. Released when Hollywood still portrayed all German soldiers as evil, it showed the moral complexities ordinary Wehrmacht troops faced. What makes this film groundbreaking is its production history. Shot simultaneously in English and German versions with different casts for different markets, it featured Richard Burton leading the English version and German star Helmut Greim in the German cut. Both versions used actual WW2 veterans as extras, sometimes having former enemies who had fought each other now appearing in scenes together. The production sparked protests in both countries. American veterans groups objected to showing sympathetic Nazis, while German critics accused it of whitewashing Wehrmacht complicity in atrocities. Director Andrew V. McLaglen received death threats from both countries. The film's most powerful sequence involves German soldiers helping American troops against SS units, based on documented cases of Wehrmacht-American cooperation in the war's final days. This scene was cut from the American release, but kept in the German version. Critics were divided along national lines. German reviews praised its nuanced portrayal, while American critics condemned its moral complexity. It grossed $8.7 million in Germany, but just $1.2 million in America. Steven Spielberg reportedly screened it while preparing Saving Private Ryan, specifically to understand how to humanize German soldiers, without excusing the Nazi regime. Number 8. Twilight's Last Gleaming, 1977. Before Crimson Tide or Dr. Strangelove, this nuclear thriller showed what happens when a rogue Air Force general takes control of a missile silo and threatens to launch unless the government releases classified Vietnam War documents. Burt Lancaster delivers a career-defining performance as General Dell, a decorated Vietnam veteran who's not actually insane but morally certain. What makes this film revolutionary is its split-screen technique. Director Robert Aldrich uses up to 4 simultaneous frames showing different perspectives of the crisis, creating unbearable tension. The Pentagon refused any cooperation, calling the script dangerously plausible and threatening legal action against the studio. The production built a full-scale ICBM launch facility on a German soundstage that was so realistic that actual missile technicians visiting the set couldn't distinguish it from the real thing. This prompted a Pentagon investigation into potential security leaks. The film's most shocking element was its fictional Doctrine 303, classified documents revealing that American leadership knew Vietnam was unwinnable but continued fighting to demonstrate credibility to the Soviets. This fictional document so closely matched the actual Pentagon papers that several congressmen demanded investigations into whether the filmmakers had accessed classified information. Critics praised its technical mastery, but audiences found it too bleak, with the New York Times calling it brilliantly crafted but almost unwatchable in its hopelessness. It grossed just $5.8 million against its $8 million budget. Director Paul Greengrass cites it as direct inspiration for United 93, saying, "It showed me how to make political thriller feel urgent rather than preachy." Number 7. Force 10 from Navarone, 1978. This sequel to The Guns of Navarone took 17 years to make and replaced the entire original cast, yet somehow still delivers spectacular action. Robert Shaw, in his final role, and Harrison Ford lead a commando mission into Yugoslavia to assassinate a German spy while helping local partisans destroy a strategically vital bridge. What makes this film remarkable is its troubled production history. Originally planned for the 1960s with Gregory Peck and David Niven returning, the project collapsed repeatedly until producer Carl Foreman mortgaged his house to finance it. 3 directors quit during pre-production, and filming in Yugoslavia was repeatedly halted by local government interference. The production faced so many disasters that the crew nicknamed it Force 10 from hindsight. Robert Shaw was battling alcoholism during filming, often delivering lines while severely intoxicated. Harrison Ford, fresh from Star Wars, resented being cast and reportedly called it a film I'd rather forget I made. Despite these challenges, the film features spectacular practical effects, including the destruction of an actual dam that Yugoslavian authorities had scheduled for demolition. The production incorporated this into the film, creating what was then the largest practical explosion ever filmed. Critics dismissed it as a pale imitation of its predecessor, but audiences made it a modest hit with $7.1 million against a $10 million budget. Its reputation has grown over decades, with military historians praising its accurate portrayal of partisan warfare tactics. Even Ford has softened, recently admitting, "It was better than I gave it credit for. Those stunts were all real, no CGI back then." Number 6. March or Die, 1977. Gene Hackman leading the French Foreign Legion against Arab warriors in 1920s. Morocco sounds like pure exploitation, but this forgotten epic delivers surprising moral complexity. Hackman plays a disillusioned WWI veteran commanding Legion recruits protecting an archaeological dig that's secretly a cover for colonial plunder. What makes this film extraordinary is its production scale. Director Dick Richards assembled over 1,500 Moroccan extras for battle scenes, used genuine Legion veterans as technical advisors, and had full access to historic Legion fortresses. The Moroccan government provided military equipment, including vintage aircraft and artillery pieces that had actually been used against the Legion historically. The cast is exceptional, with Hackman at his world-weary best, a young Terence Hill as a mysterious recruit, and Catherine Deneuve as the archaeologist with hidden motives. Max von Sydow delivers a haunting performance as the archaeologist who realizes too late that his scientific mission is enabling colonial theft. The film's most powerful sequence depicts Arab fighters using WWI tactics learned while fighting for the French against Germans, now turned against their former allies. This historically accurate detail was considered so politically sensitive that French censors demanded its removal, though the American release kept it intact. Critics were divided, with European reviewers condemning its politics, while American critics praised its moral ambiguity. Vincent Canby called it a Lawrence of Arabia for the Vietnam generation, showing imperialism's collapse from inside the imperial forces. It grossed $5.2 million against an $8 million budget, effectively ending director Richards' career. Number 5. The McKenzie Break, 1970. This forgotten POW thriller flips The Great Escape on its head. The Germans are breaking out of an Allied prison camp in Scotland. Brian Keith plays a burnt-out British intelligence officer sent to investigate escape rumors at a camp holding elite German U-boat commanders. What he discovers is the most elaborate German escape plan of the entire war, led by submarine captain Helmut Greim in a performance of chilling intelligence. What makes this film unique is its historical accuracy. Based on actual escape attempts, director Lamont Johnson shot at the real Scottish POW camps where German prisoners had been held. The production employed former guards and prisoners as technical advisors, creating such authenticity that several scenes were shot exactly where historical events occurred. The film's most tense sequence involves an underground tunnel collapse that nearly suffocated several actors. No special effects. The cast dug real tunnels and used authentic German engineering techniques documented from actual escape attempts. Critics praised its unconventional approach, with Roger Ebert writing, "For once we see the war from the opposite perspective, realizing that courage and ingenuity weren't exclusively Allied virtues." The film's historical accuracy extended to its portrayal of Nazi ideological divisions among prisoners, showing conflicts between dedicated Nazis and professional military men that rarely appeared in 1970s war films. Despite positive reviews, the film grossed only $3.5 million against its $4.2 million budget. Director Christopher Nolan has cited it as inspiration for Dunkirk's multiple perspective structure, saying, "The McKenzie Break showed how to build tension by switching between opposing viewpoints without losing clarity." Number 4. Zulu Dawn, 1979. This prequel to the 1964 classic Zulu might be the only film to show a complete British military disaster without adding some redemptive victory. Set during the 1879 Anglo-Zulu War, it portrays the Battle of Isandlwana, where 20,000 Zulu warriors annihilated a technologically superior British force in one of colonialism's most devastating defeats. What makes this film extraordinary is its production scale. Producer Nate Cohn assembled 13,000 actual Zulu extras, many descendants of the men who fought in the original battle. The South African government provided military equipment, creating the largest military film production since World War II. The battle sequences are unprecedented, shot with 27 cameras simultaneously to capture the overwhelming scale. The cast includes Peter O'Toole as the arrogant General Lord Chelmsford, Burt Lancaster as a pragmatic colonel who foresees disaster, and actual Zulu chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi playing his own ancestor, King Cetshwayo. Director Douglas Hickox insisted on historical accuracy, even recreating the British Army's fatal ammunition distribution system that contributed to their defeat. The film's most controversial aspect was its unflinching portrayal of British incompetence and arrogance. Released during the final years of British colonial presence in Africa, it caused diplomatic tension by showing imperial forces not as heroic, but as both brutal and tactically inept. Critics recognized its technical achievements, but audiences stayed away, with the film grossing just $4.8 million against its $9 million budget. Military historians consider it among the most accurate battle reconstructions ever filmed, with Royal Military Academy. Sandhurst, still using scenes for tactical training. Number 3, Too Late the Hero, 1970. Director Robert Aldrich basically remade his masterpiece The Dirty Dozen in the Pacific Theater, but this time without the victory at the end. Michael Caine and Cliff Robertson lead a suicide mission to destroy a Japanese radio station in the New Hebrides, and absolutely everything goes wrong. What makes this film brutally realistic is Aldrich's refusal to glorify anything. Characters die suddenly, heroics fail, and even the mission itself is revealed to be strategically worthless. The production's authenticity was obsessive. Aldrich filmed on actual Pacific islands where fighting occurred, used real WWB equipment, and even hired Japanese veterans as technical advisors. The cast endured nightmare conditions filming in the Philippine jungle. Henry Fonda suffered severe heat stroke, Cliff Robertson contracted parasites, and Michael Caine later called it the most physically demanding film of my career. During one ambush scene, an effects explosion misfired, causing actual injuries to several actors, which Aldrich kept in the final cut. The film's most shocking sequence involves Allied troops killing surrendering Japanese soldiers, based on documented war crimes that most Hollywood films ignored. This scene caused the film to be banned in Japan until 1982. Critics recognized its unflinching realism, but audiences expecting heroics stayed away. Vincent Canby wrote, "Aldrich gives us the war film Hollywood has avoided making for 25 years, one where even victory feels like defeat." It grossed just $1.7 million against a $6 million budget. Director Quentin Tarantino calls it the most nihilistic mainstream war film ever made, and screened it for his cast before filming Inglourious Basterds. Number 2, Go Tell the Spartans, 1978. Released while Vietnam was still a raw wound, this haunting film predicted everything about that conflict's failure in a story set in 1964, when America was just beginning a serious involvement. Burt Lancaster plays a career Army officer assigned to defend an abandoned village with no strategic value, using South Vietnamese troops of questionable loyalty and American advisors who don't speak the language. What makes this film prophetic is how it portrayed the futility of Vietnam years before most Americans would accept it. The screenplay was written by Wendell Mays based on Daniel Ford's novel, but producers couldn't find financing for years because the material was considered un-American. Lancaster finally secured independent funding by deferring his own salary. Director Ted Post created uncanny authenticity despite the low $1.5 million budget. The production constructed an entire Vietnamese village in California, hired actual Vietnamese refugees as extras, and used genuine military equipment loaned by Vietnam veterans who supported the film's anti-war message. The film's most devastating sequence involves the discovery of a mass grave from the previous French colonial war, suggesting the Americans are merely repeating historical mistakes. This scene was so controversial that several theaters refused to show the film, with one Texas cinema owner calling it communist propaganda. Critics recognized its brilliance, with Roger Ebert writing, "This film understands Vietnam better than the politicians who sent boys to die there." Despite critical acclaim, it grossed only $2.1 million. Military historians now regard it as the most accurate portrayal of Vietnam's early advisory period, with former Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara reportedly saying, "If I had seen this in 1964, perhaps things would have been different." Number 1, Cross of Iron, 1977. Sam Peckinpah's only war film makes Saving Private Ryan look like a Disney movie. Set on the Eastern Front in 1943, It follows a German sergeant and his men retreating from Russia while battling both the Soviets and their own glory-hungry Prussian officer. James Coburn delivers a career-defining performance as the war-weary Sergeant Steiner, fighting not for Hitler, but for his men's survival. What makes this film revolutionary is Peckinpah's unflinching violence. Using his trademark slow motion and multi-angle techniques, he created battle sequences so realistic that several crew members vomited during filming. The production's authenticity was obsessive. Yugoslavian locations where actual Eastern Front battles occurred, genuine WBUA tanks and weapons, and technical advisors who had fought in the actual campaigns depicted. The $6 million production nearly killed Peckinpah. Filming in Yugoslavia during winter with a mostly communist crew, he battled pneumonia, alcohol addiction, and studio interference. He collapsed twice on set but refused hospitalization. The troubled shoot ran over budget, causing the studio to cut the final battle sequence, which Peckinpah called cinematic castration. The film's most controversial element was its sympathetic portrayal of Wehrmacht soldiers as distinct from Nazi ideology. This nuance confused 1977 audiences accustomed to one-dimensional German villains. German audiences gave standing ovations, while American viewers walked out of screenings. Critics were polarized. European reviews hailed it as the greatest war film ever made, while American critics called it nihilistic exploitation. Orson Welles wrote Peckinpah, "I've just seen your masterpiece. Unfortunately, nobody else will." It grossed just $798,000 in America, but $8.2 million internationally. Directors from Spielberg to Tarantino cited as revolutionary, with Spielberg admitting, "I stole several techniques from Cross of Iron for Saving Private Ryan." These forgotten cinematic treasures delivered what mainstream studios wouldn't touch: brutal honesty about warfare without patriotic sugarcoating. They showed that war isn't just about heroes and villains, but about human beings caught in impossible situations. Which of these forgotten classics surprised you most? Have you seen any of them, or are you planning to track them down? Here's the real question that'll start a war in the comments. Are these gritty, morally complex 70s war films actually better than today's CGI spectacles? Or do modern audiences need clearer heroes and villains to root for? Drop your opinions below.